Hi, how are you? This is Damaris Maria Grossman, and this is the Mindfully Integrative Show. And today we have a wonderful mindful chat with Todd Nyholm. He is a somatic therapist, and he does many of things with his clients to help them heal better. And he is going to tell you a little bit more about himself. So thanks so much for coming onto the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk with you.
Yeah, I really look forward to your time, and I appreciate you giving the audience some of your insights and where and what you're doing. So, of course, as I ask people first, is kind of what's a little fun fact people may not be able to find you when they're looking you up.
So I like to study languages. I actually have a degree in modern languages, which means I studied German and French and Spanish and Japanese. And it's just a lot of fun for me to look at life through different languages, keep my mind challenged. So
Oh, that's great. Yeah, to
kind of
keep
a
the
fun
mind
thing.
challenged. What's your favorite language?
I really do like Japanese and German,
Oh,
partly because the experiences I had within them, with the people I knew and that kind of thing. So my ex-wife was from Japan and had a lot of wonderful experiences
oh,
there
your
with
wife's from
her.
Japan. So you've been to Japan
I've been 6 times,
six times.
so
Oh, that's awesome. And oh,
yeah,
that's
it's
great.
yeah,
I
beautiful.
had friends that were living out there for a period of
Oh,
time, and they had to live there
yeah.
for work, and then they moved back. But so you know a lot of Japanese, and you said German also.
Yeah, and I lived in Germany. I went to school there for a year, and so a lot of cool experiences there as well, traveling around and meeting
German,
people. And
German and Japanese are not easy languages.
no, but they were both kind of fun for me. I had a much more difficult time with French, just like getting my mind around it for some reason, where
Okay.
Japanese came a little easier and German too. And maybe it was because I was speaking with my girlfriend at the time, and so I had a lot of enthusiasm, and it was fun, to learn
Oh,
language.
nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Is she now your wife?
She's my ex-wife now.
Oh,
She
ex-wife.
went
Sorry
back to
about that.
Japan. That's okay. We just kind of had different life paths, and we had a really cordial breakup, and everything. So she's doing well in Japan now. So yeah.
Oh, well, you learned a lot, and you could still travel out there.
Oh yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
So let's kind of go into kind of where, you became this somatic therapist. So, of course, I'd love you to explain what that is, but what kind of gets you from there? Like, tell us a little bit about, I mean, this is where you started to kind of get into that.
Sure. Well, look, real quick, I'll just tell you what I mean by somatic therapist. So, I use rolfing and structural integration, and I'm using acupuncture and acupressure, sorry, shiatsu and Traeger work and a bunch of different things that no one's really heard of before. And so one of my teachers that I was learning from, he's like, I just call it somatic therapy, and he was telling me that 25 years ago. And it's just easier, because the business card gets too long and all that. So it's a lot of hands-on things and then a lot of talking to people with some energetic integration in what I'm doing. Um, and I got there because I've had health problems since I was a kid, and I was trying to figure some of that out myself. And I also went through some pretty severe trauma when I was a kid with a crazy person that lived in my neighborhood. So I've been trying to like improve my life and improve my health since as far back as I could remember. And partly I got to all this because now I feel better than I've ever felt before. I'm a whole new universe now with all the things I've been able to do and the help I got and the methods I put together. And so I wanted to put all that together for other people so people like me could find it. I just imagine some kids out there and he's 8 and he's like, how do I solve this problem? I don't see any hope. So I'm trying to get everything that I put together, and I kind of standardized it and I put it into a form so that I could pass it to people. And that's kind of how I got to where I am now. So,
That's great. What has been for you like with that, what's your favorite part of your somatic energy, somatic therapy?
yeah. So I mean, overall, it's just helping people who couldn't get help anywhere else. So, like when I'm at work, that's my favorite thing. Someone comes in and for 20 years they've been struggling, and I'm like, okay, we'll see what we can do. This might not go quickly, but I think I can help you. And if I can't, I can probably get you to someone who can. And I kind of love giving people that kind of hope, and kind of working through that. So that's my favorite thing about, what I do. And I've been doing this about 19 years now, running my practice. And so I've gotten a lot more efficient over the years. So it's less about thinking about how to do it, but more how to help somebody directly. So,
Yeah, yeah. And on average, how long are you with your clients?
anywhere from 30 minutes to 90 minutes, somewhere
Mm.
in that bracket, depending on their age and what they
Oh.
can handle and what we're doing for them. So
And then how do they stay with you for a few months, 6 months, a year?
some of them they're in and out kind of quickly because they want me to fix something kind of quickly,
Yeah.
and other people I've been taking care of for probably 17 years, and they
Oh,
come in
wow.
and a lot of cool things I can do to help their health just improve after we get them over whatever ailment they might have. And then I see a lot of like cowboys and ranchers, and they're kind of constantly hurting themselves in interesting ways, getting thrown off bowls of horses and stuff.
Because you're said you're out in Wyoming, right?
I'm out in Wyoming. Yeah. So I see a lot of interesting, people who are really working 7-day weeks dealing with cows, and they're on horses. And then I was in martial arts for a long time. So I see a lot of martial artists, and they come in with all kinds of interesting problems for me to work through too, so.
Wow.
Yeah.
What do you find with your clients? What has like, is there a story or for you that stands out, or for with maybe even a story within your family that you'd like to share that helped? Did you help any of your family members with this, or a client that you'd like to share?
Yeah, with my family, they haven't always they don't always come up to see me because they don't live around here. And so it's a long drive. And so when I
Mhm.
see them on holidays, they're like, can you help me with this and help me with that?
Right.
Um, some of my more favorite things, like working with people, is actually getting people back so they can walk again. Like particularly, I see someone get thrown off a horse and they crawl in to come see me, or they're wheeled in, and I get their
Right.
body back together and kind of get their mind back together. Then we can get them up and doing things again and get them back on the horse and give them a little bit more intelligent way of taking care of themselves so they don't do that again. So.
Okay. And have you felt like your work, when you're working with these patients, like I say patients, for me, I mean clients, um, is it satisfying the one patient even if they see you, or satisfying just even that, like, the ones that keep coming back? Like, what do you think that the reason they do keep coming back? Or if
Yeah, I
they
think
say to you,
yeah, mostly I think they're surprised like that after I get their body doing better, I can help them out a lot with what's going on in their inner life, and that's kind of my big passion and why I started writing books and why I started making videos. Because
I
well, it's
mean,
great.
talk to me about the books that you've written.
Yeah, so I have two out, and the first one's called what did I call it? Food, why do you trouble me so much? And it was like,
Food.
yeah. And so I was having so many problems with it, and I was trying every diet you can imagine, and I couldn't get myself to do better. And so I made something that was sort of a mental and emotional approach that kind of got around sort of the fad diets. And with that, I lost, I think, 50 pounds in a few months, and I've been able to keep that off. And it was a huge thing because I looked at the triggers from when I was a kid and the things around my health journey that I kind of got into using food to help deal with the pain I was in as I was figuring out what some of the problems were. So I had a whole series of infections that took me, I don't know, 30 years and 50 doctors to find someone who could figure out what was going on, And so as I was going through the treatment process with that, diet became, I've been looking at it for decades at that point, but the combination of the two was kind of important. So my first book handled that. The second one I called Brain, Why Do You Trouble Me So Much? I'm looking over here because I was looking
Oh
at
yeah,
it
you
this
can show
morning.
the book. We have a video. So those that are watching, yeah.
So
So I
yeah,
want people to reach you at some point. So brain, why you trouble me. Food, why you trouble me. Super important.
yeah.
So,
And the titles
I
make me
mean,
laugh. Yeah.
you're a somatic therapist, but you're also an author. So, I mean, people do need to know what made you come up with that. What happened with so what's going on with the brain, you trouble me so much. Let's talk
So
about
that was
that.
it was a big picture book. And a lot of the methods I made to heal myself, I realized at some point was this mind, body, emotion category, and
Agree.
you couldn't, there was things I knew I couldn't heal without figuring out some of the things that were going on with my mind and with emotions, with sort of a spiritual connection to life. And so what's in that book is really big picture stuff about how to work with that inner world, how to see it more clearly, how to sort of break down some of the programming and become more authentic, how to work with yourself and make decisions, make conscious decisions so that you can go through a chart and say, how will this decision affect the rest of my life? And so I made that book partly when I was kind of sick. I wanted to get some of the ideas I'd been using out of my head. And so I made a really big picture book and I packed a lot. And that became this Brain, Why Do You Trouble Me So Much book. So
Which one was your first book? The book, the brain, or the food?
the food one was the first one I published, but not the first one I wrote. So
Okay.
I'm kind of in this phase of stacking them. So I have 2 manuscripts ready to go, and I'm writing one now, which I think will end up being book 3 because it's a bunch of specific methods for triggering your nervous system and getting your brainwaves.
Congratulations. That's
Yeah,
exciting.
yeah, it's cool stuff. I really like it, and I want to get as much of that out to people as quickly as I can. And so, I spend some time alone. I live in a cabin kind of by myself, so I get a lot of time to write. And at this point, I can write pretty quickly, And so things are coming out in an interesting way. So
That's so I commend you for that. I admire that you're able to read as much. I have toddlers and other work that sometimes as I have all of this in my brain and I get out little by little, this book will come out eventually. In
people write in
me.
different ways, right?
But yes, I commend you for being on your third book. That's quite an achievement in itself. And the fact that you've been able to connect with your own mind, body, and education to then bring it out to other people is really important. Um, what would you say is kind of a reason for your success now? Like, because you're in, seem to be in this self-discovery, like you've been writing. What do you think is one of the reasons why you've kind of like been able to overcome these trauma challenges that you talked about?
I've thought about that a lot because I've met people who had similar problems to me that it kind of beat them down, and they're some of them haven't left their parents' basement in decades, and it
Right,
just kind
right.
of, yeah.
I want to
And I'm
know
like,
your
well,
point of view because I can tell you my point of view and then you tell me yours.
yeah, I mean, some of it I think is active desperation. Like, I'm going to figure this out, and I don't
Right.
care who's in the way. I don't care what I have to do. If I have to read a 4,000-year-old text, or go to Tibet, or go to India, or go to Japan to find the answer, then I was willing to do that. And I think it kind of suits my authenticity, I think, in a way too, because I'm really curious and I really want to know how things work. And when pushed against a wall, I can't back down. And it's one of the things I really noticed about myself with some of that. It's like there were times I could have given up and the pain would have ended, but I can't, and for me, that was kind of an interesting discovery. And then figuring out certain things, even when I was younger, I have meditations that I was doing at 8 or 9. I'd sit in the backyard and I would do this meditation and I'd feel wonderful. And I didn't know that's what it was then. I just sourced it inside. And so that helped me a bunch. And then later on, I'd mention it to teachers like, oh, you can't do that on your own. You need someone to teach it to you. And so then I got a little off my path and I had to come back to it, in terms of my own way of getting there. So I am curious what you would say is why some.
So I feel like when it comes to your path of like that positive versus negative transition, I feel like from my own trauma, because people do ask that and they say, hey, how did you overcome? I do think that there's an innate ability within an individual that some are willing to get past. I think all of us are struggling in some way. And like you said, some are sitting in the basement and others decide, no, this is not the path I want. As you probably teach in your books and as I talk about a mindful way every day, it's like I believe that there is that wall or that direction. You have a choice. It's just getting past that really kind of murky, dark stuff and be willing to see if there is solution. So for me, I was like, yeah, people said, well, I do think that there is that resilience within us, but I think that through the quiet times, you being in your cabin or you being reading or whatever that quiet moments for others is being able to kind of get through that murky and or scatteredness, whatever it is for someone, and then trying to see that other side. I think that there's some individuals that are able to I mean, it must be a resilience beyond, and others aren't. And so that's kind of why we're here, right? We're here to kind of find these different integrative ways to kind of change people's perspective on this is not, you're not supposed to just be depressed or tired or fatigued or in pain. That's not your, as I called it, some individuals, that's not your story. Okay. That doesn't have to be your story. But if you want to sit in that story, you're going to sit in your basement, right?
That's right. If people give up their power,
So
it's so
what do
easy.
you do for those individuals that you may feel seem that are stuck, right? So I just wonder how you have you been able to you work with some of those people or have you found that more people just come to you when they really need you?
No, some of them, I'm trying to get them over being stuck. And I have this interesting advantage that I'm working on their body while I'm talking to them. So I have some cool methods where I can make their nervous system switch from a sort of sympathetic mode to a parasympathetic mode,
Right.
and then talk to them while I'm doing it. So I can get them to see how they're pushing themselves back into that and areas where they are giving up their power. And I can get them to feel it in their body where it's like, okay, here's where you could change this to make a difference. And I think for maybe 2/3 of the people that come to see me, that works pretty well, and the other third, they're holding on for dear life to that kind of emotion, right? So
Yeah, I can imagine. I guess I can definitely I'm thinking about it now. So we're talking, you were talking about different method or way, as I call it, for patients and clients. What would you say is something that you'd like to share with the audience as a little small tip for them?
Yeah, I think if you're struggling in life or with your health, there's nothing more important than getting a sense of what's going on inside you. Like, what is your mind doing? What are your emotions doing? Because people tend to ignore their emotions or suppress them, or they let them completely run them and they think that their emotions own them. And those two things I think are so huge that most people miss because we've gotten so focused on the body, and taking things here and taking things there that we miss how much is going on inside. And every once in a while, I have this funny image in my head that when I see people and I help them out and they go home and they're like smacking themselves in the face with how they think about things and their emotional states and things like that, because they've been trained away from looking at them. They've been trained away from looking at what is your mind doing? What are your emotions doing? It's all about put your attention on everybody else. And so there's a real art to putting your attention on yourself without judgment so that you can come back to yourself and then see what's going on. And that, if I could give everybody one thing, I would try to get everyone that perspective, of looking at themselves inside for themselves and not for anyone else or not for their work or not for those things, like what's actually going on inside you. So.
Yeah, I bet you, yeah, to look within is a challenge for many. I notice when I discuss with colleagues and clients and those, it can be difficult per se, but yet I tell, others it could be pretty beautiful too. Um, from all the years that you've been working with patients and clients and those individuals and your writing, is there some advice you'd give yourself that you hadn't done, 10 or 15 years ago that you do now?
Well, it depends on what part of my process I was in, when I was going through things. Because one of the things I would like to tell myself at some point is what I just kind of mentioned, getting
Yeah.
myself focused inside. I would very much like to be able to go back to when I was 10 and say, here's the infections you have right now. here's here's the kind of doctor that could help you, because that took me decades to figure out. And at that point, some of those kinds of infections, they didn't even know were there and they didn't have testing methods. So there's little things like that, but
Wow.
you can't quite go back and do
What kind
that.
of infections were you induced with? Wow.
So I had Borrelia and Bartonella and
Oh
three
gosh.
kinds
So,
of
so you had
bacteria.
the oh, and then did you go see a provider to get tested and everything? Oh goodness.
Yeah, so it took me a while to find one, and then I had a whole series of gut problems, like gut
Yeah.
parasites, and
I know
then
it's
I had
so
a surgery.
connected, the gut and the mind.
Yeah, oh for sure, yeah, and then I had a surgery, and that got infected with a couple things, and so at
Huh.
one point I'm had like 12 infections running in my body before I really found someone that could figure a lot of that out. So that was a big part of the journey, because I was talking to doctors and they were trying, but there's like, this is just you, and I'm like, no, it's not. There's something wrong here that I got to
Right.
figure out. Right. So.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, there is an underlying situation. There's it's not maybe a simple solution, but different parts. And I'm glad that you were able to kind of find your path and then find a way to help others with your, being a somatic therapist and such. Um, how can those reach you? I'd love to, I'll have it in the show notes, but how can those reach you and get a hold of your books that you have?
Sure. So I originally called my system the Nyholm Vital Life Method, which was way too long. And one of my editors is like, why don't we shorten that? And so we took the NY from my last name and that word vitality, and we called it Nytality. And so the best way to find me, where everything is kind of linked, is my website, which is just nytality.com. And you can find the books there. And I'm putting out videos. I'm trying to reach people through books and videos and audio, because people learn in so many different ways. And I really want to get all this stuff out of me to as many people as I could get. And you can email me there if you have any specific questions, and I can get back to people that way too. So,
All right, that's awesome. No, I look forward to them reaching out to you and touching base and for them to so it's Nightality, right?
yes.
All right, I'll have it in the show notes for those listening.
Awesome.
I want to say thank you so much for being on the show, for taking a few minutes of your time and educating those on what you do and for them to learn more about you. And thank you guys for those watching that enjoying the Mindfully Integrative show. And this is Damaris Grossman. And make sure each and every day you find a mindful way.